Hello, Sitaram, and welcome to all our listeners in Trinidad and Tobago. A good morning to you all. The weather is beautiful outside. And let me welcome you all to this, our regular Thursday morning program on radio and TV Jagriti on the subject of addiction and recovery. Just to remind our listeners, this is an interactive program. The numbers you can call is 663-2335 and 663-1027. And you may call at any time in the program if you have questions for me or the host of the program as we go along. And to remind you too that this program will be aired again on radio and TV Jagriti at 10 p.m. tonight. So those of you who are busy this morning who could not stay with us for the entire program, you can listen to it again tonight. And at the end of the program, within a few minutes, it will be posted on Facebook and on my YouTube channel, that is Addiction and Recovery, so that you can use it as a resource material to refer to any friend or acquaintance who you think may benefit from the subject matter that was discussed in the program. Today, we are very, very fortunate to have with us Dr. Dhanoo. I met this gentleman on another program a few weeks ago where he was doing a presentation, and I was so impressed by what he said that I thought, he could be of immense value to us in this program. Just to tell you a little bit about Dr. Dhanoo. Dr. Dhanoo is currently the president of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and he's serving his third term of office and serving the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago in various roles for the past 8 years. He's also a director of the Trinidad and Tobago, that is Non-Communicable Diseases Alliance, and serves on the Ministry of Health's Food Advisory Committee. He's a lecturer of biochemistry at the School of Nursing, Faculty of Medical Sciences, Department of Food Production, Faculty of Food and Agriculture, and a research associate at the Faculty of Science and Technology, Department of Life Sciences. Dr. Dhanoo also holds a PhD from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, in clinical biochemistry. His work involves investigating novel, non-invasive diabetes screening and testing methods, which is of particular interest in screening children for diabetes risk in Trinidad and Tobago. And these are only some of the things that he's doing. I know he's very involved in a lot of other voluntary work. That's how I managed to meet him. So welcome, Dr. Dhanoo, to our program. And I know that this is a program about addiction and recovery to substance abuse and drug addiction, and that you have another program that you do on another radio station. I also am aware, being involved in radio and television for the last 30 years, that your audience would be slightly different in that platform to the one you would be addressing today. This being radio and TV Jagriti, although we have almost predominantly East Indian based listeners, but we do have a lot of people from the other ethnic groups listening to this station, because I get questions and queries from them from time to time seeking assistance. So that I want to welcome you. I know that diabetes has no respect for whether you are Indian or African or Chinese or whatever, but it has to do with your lifestyle. And yes, the lifestyle, the cultural lifestyle of various ethnic groups are slightly different. So it may lend itself, and you are the expert, it may lend itself to some groups probably being at higher risk for diabetes than some others, depending on our cultural lifestyle in terms of our eating and eating habits and so on. So at this point, I would want to invite you to speak generally on whatever, respond to anything that I might have raised in your mind, and to speak to our listeners on the whole question of diabetes in Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome again.
All right. So thank you so much for this invitation, Mr. Dwaraka, and I'm very glad to be here on Radio and TV Jagriti, speaking about diabetes and of course for your show about alcoholism and addiction. Um, a little bit about the Diabetes Association for those who don't know about us. We've been around for the past 35 or so years. Our head office is located in Chaguanas. We have branches throughout the country. There are 20 branches across Trinidad and Tobago. Um, our objectives at the Diabetes Association is to promote diabetes education, diabetes screening, diabetes advocacy, and research. And we do this through a host of activities at the community levels across the country, and of course, national events. We do a lot of activities for people living with diabetes and people affected by diabetes, people at risk of diabetes. Particularly, we do quite a lot now with children. Tomorrow is actually our National Diabetes Primary School Quiz. That is going to be at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Persons could tune in there, could go to our Facebook page or YouTube page, and you could be able to tune in there as well. But a little bit about the state of diabetes in Trinidad and Tobago. So the estimated prevalence of diabetes is about 15% of our population. Now, that is a projected average that has come about from studies which were done about a decade ago. Now, projections took place, but we haven't really done a national survey until now. There's currently a national survey called the STEPS survey, which is the Pan American Health Organization STEP survey run by the Ministry of Health. And persons may have seen persons may have seen advertisements about this STEP survey. I believe there are about 5,000 persons who need to be surveyed. So if you are one of the lucky ones who are going to be surveyed, I encourage persons to take advantage of that opportunity. It's free, of course, you get all of those results done, but you'll be able to help us understand in the country what's going on in the population. And we'll really be able to understand what is happening in terms of our prevalence and, of course, our risk factors. Now, a little bit about diabetes in a nutshell. Diabetes is a group of diseases, so it's not a single disease, it's a group of diseases which affects how the body controls blood sugar. So when I say it's a group of diseases, um, many people think diabetes is the same thing, but there are many types. So you have type 1 and type 2, gestational. You even have more minor types like moody, maturity onset diabetes of the young, and later latent onset diabetes. But these forms of diabetes are less rare or rather more rare than the other forms of diabetes, which of course most people will know as type 2 diabetes. So as I said, it's a group of diseases. Most of the times you can't go from one to the other. That's a big misconception people have in Trinidad and Tobago. So in a nutshell, let me just tell you what diabetes is. As I said, it's the inability of the body or the reduced ability of the body to control blood sugar. And how does the body control sugar? Sugar is important for you to survive. All of your cells, all of your muscle cells, your brain cells, everything in your body is fueled primarily by sugar. And you're going to be consuming the sugar in the form of carbohydrates, in the form of simple sugars, in the form of complex carbohydrates like your starch, your rice, your roti, your bread, all of those things. So those are your forms of sugar that you're going to be consuming. I think I might be having some issues with my camera here. Let me just make sure that I'm good. Right, good. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're gonna be needing the sugar, and again, the way that the sugar is regulated, when sugar goes in your body produces a hormone called insulin. And insulin is very, very important. It's important for you to survive. What insulin does, insulin acts like a key, and this key allows sugar to go into your cells, to go into the cells that need it for energy. And if you don't have insulin or the insulin doesn't work properly, or the cells are resisting the insulin, the cells aren't opening or responding to the insulin, here's where you can have sugar building up in your blood vessels. And when sugar builds up in your blood vessels over a period of time, then they cause damage, or the sugar causes damage. This damage is due to inflammation, which simply means that the sugar actually turns into another compound. We call these advanced glycated end products, but they turn into this glycated compound, which tends to stick up onto the walls of the arteries and veins. And when they stick up, they are something foreign to the body. And anything foreign to the body, your body is going to attack it. And that's what inflammation is. So as your body attacks it, of course, your blood vessels are going to be attacked as well and damaged. And blood vessels, as everyone should know, blood vessels are found throughout your body. And every living tissue, every living cell, they have blood vessels close by. And if those blood vessels are damaged, then wherever those blood vessels are, you're going to have a disease. So if you have very small blood vessels and very large blood vessels. So you have blood vessels in the eye, and if they're damaged, you lose your eyesight. You have diabetic retinopathy, you could develop glaucoma, develop cataract. Blood vessels in your kidney, you lose your kidney function, you develop diabetic nephropathy. Blood vessels in the tips of your fingers and your toes, and then you lose sensation, and you lose your ability to heal as quickly, and you can get gangrene and even get an amputation. These large blood vessels are affected as well in the brain and in the heart, and this results in cardiovascular disease, and you can get stroke and heart attack. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much other things that could happen to you when you have uncontrolled diabetes because of the same mechanism where your blood vessels are damaged, and everywhere anybody is affected by diabetes. So that's really what diabetes is in a nutshell. And just one more thing is persons, if you want to look out for diabetes, what are the symptoms of diabetes? Whether or not you have type 1 or type 2, and just before I say that, one of the biggest misconceptions in Trinidad and Tobago is what is type 1 and what is type 2. Now, type 1 diabetes is the rarer of the two forms or the two main forms. So only about 5% of our population with diabetes would have type 1. Type 2 is about 95% of the population. So most people would have type 2. Type 2 is because of something called insulin resistance. So it starts from insulin resistance and impaired glucose tolerance. And this, of course, is because of the risk factors. We'll talk about being overweight or having diabetes in your family, or not exercising enough, or not eating well. Things like that will cause type 2 diabetes, and of course, getting older. Type 1 diabetes, on the other hand, is different. And a lot of people seem to think when they're on insulin, that is type 1. No. Yes, insulin means that you have to be on type 1. But for people with type 2 diabetes in the later stages, if it becomes uncontrolled or not able to be controlled with oral tablets, with oral hypoglycemics, insulin is given. But that doesn't mean you have type 1. It's still type 2. Type 1 is an autoimmune condition. And this is because for some reason we're not sure of. It may be because of viruses, it may be because of environment, maybe because of genetics. And it tends to happen very early in life. So very early, as young as a few months old. Again, people in Trinidad say you're born with diabetes, but you're not born with it. Sometimes they develop it as young as a few months old, a few years old, in the early teens, late teens. And this is because for some reason, your body thinks that your pancreas is something foreign. It destroys the pancreatic beta cells that produces the insulin, and you no longer produce insulin, so you need to take injections. And we have quite a lot of children right now, about 100 and something children, more than 100 and almost 200 or more children with type 1 diabetes in Trinidad and Tobago. And these children work with us. But as I was saying, what are the symptoms quickly? There are four main symptoms of diabetes. Four main symptoms, and I like to explain it like this. Firstly, when you have diabetes, generally your blood sugars tend to be high. When your blood sugars tend to be high, your body wants to regulate the blood sugars. Your body wants to make sure that you bring the blood sugar down by increasing the amount of water in the blood. So you feel thirsty. So increased thirst, which is called polydipsia. So you have increased thirst, you drink more, and as you drink more, that goes into your body. So that's the first symptom, increased thirst. When you're drinking more water, obviously the water has to go somewhere. So you're gonna urinate more. So this is called polyuria. So you urinate more. When you're urinating, in the urine, because your blood sugar is high, once your blood sugar is above 250 or so, that sugar comes out into the urine. And as the sugar comes out of the urine, that sugar would have normally gone into giving you energy. But the sugar is now being peed out. So that sugar, which is lost, means that your body is not obtaining enough energy. So your body is going to turn to fat to break down some fat. And that means you're going to have sudden weight loss. So that sudden weight loss happens because you're going to be peeing out that sugar. And the fourth thing that's going to happen is because you're peeing out that sugar, and of course, you're not going to have as much energy, you're going to feel very tired and lethargic. So tiredness is the fourth main symptom. So increased thirst, increased urination, sudden weight loss, and feeling tired or lethargic are the four main symptoms. But of course, there are many other symptoms, itching and rashes, hair loss, all of those things could account for diabetes. But once you have these big four, you should go to see a doctor and get a test, get a HbA1c test. That's the test we recommend to see what's going on.
What is the normal blood sugar level? I know most people say is 100, and as soon as they start to go beyond that, they start to panic.
Yeah.
If it dropped too low, you might go into a coma. You want to speak a little to that, Dr. Dan?
Sure. Sure. So the normal blood sugar levels depends on how long ago you would have had a meal. So we categorize it into two groups. Fasting, and fasting means that you haven't had anything to eat or drink except water within the last 8 hours. And if you are fasting, then your blood sugar should not rise above 125 milligrams per deciliter. That's a unit we use in Trinidad and Tobago. So once it doesn't rise above 125, that should be okay. However, some studies have shown if it is between 100 and 125 on most days, you might be at risk for prediabetes, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes. So generally, 100 is the target. It's fine if you have 110, 120 on some days, but if it is that it's regularly between 100 and 125 or very close to 125, then that means it may be at risk for prediabetes. Over 125 indicates higher blood sugar. Now, you spoke about the lows. So the lows for fasting, we don't want it to go below 80 milligrams per deciliter. And this is the general target for, or rather the general cutoff for lows. But for some persons, if you're not living with diabetes, some persons operate normally when their blood sugars are 75 or even 70. And that may be okay for persons who are not diabetic. But for a person who is living with diabetes, going down to 70 and below means that issues can happen. Because remember I said, diabetes is a problem with regulating blood sugar. Regulating means that sometimes your blood sugar is going to go high, sometimes it's going to go low, but you need it to be in that narrow range, which is between 80 and 125. So low blood sugars are very important to manage, to note, and anybody can be affected by low blood sugars, and more so people with diabetes, and even more so people on insulin. Low blood sugars are extremely dangerous because, yes, it can put you in a coma, and you can lose your life. There are many persons who die and fall asleep and die in their sleep because their blood sugars go too low. They take insulin in the night and they don't monitor what's happening and their blood sugars go too low. So it's very important to note the signs of low blood sugar and note how to deal with low blood sugar, which is simply just to drink something sweet. To drink half a glass of juice, half a glass of soft drink. That's the medicine for low blood sugar. Now, I told you there are two categories. One is fasting blood sugar and the other one is after eat. So right after eat, we don't really test an hour after, well, either hour or 2 hours after we will test. But 2 hours after you eat, your blood sugar should not rise over 180. So it should not rise over 180. Sometimes it might rise slightly. Like if you drink some juice, you will see it rises up very fast, very quickly, and it almost hits the 180 and comes back down. So that's the fasting cutoff. That's the postprandial, the after meal cutoff.
Right.
So to recap, the low, you don't want to go below 80. The highs, if you're fasted, not above 125, but the sweet spot is 100. And if it 2 hours after eat, you don't want it to go past 180.
So, okay, these days we have a lot of fruits and so on, mango in particular. If you eat mango like the evening before, will that show up in your sugar the next morning when you test?
Yes, and it depends on how much you have, and it depends on your blood sugar control as well. Because again, diabetes is not just you're healthy, you have diabetes, it's a spectrum. And that spectrum means that various persons have different levels of control, and various persons have different effects when they consume certain amounts of sugar. So in general, we don't want persons to have too much mango because you think fruit is very healthy, which it is compared to to chocolates and candy. Fruit is healthier, but fruit also does contain a lot of sugar. And some people say, oh, it's natural sugar. It doesn't matter. Natural is not a word that is defined, to be honest, or has a clear definition. Anybody could slap the word natural on, and it doesn't have a clear definition of what natural means. Because of course, everything is made of chemicals. Me being a biochemist, I have the authority to tell you that everything is made of chemicals. And the same sugar that's found in the mango is the same sugar that you could find in condensed milk, or the same sugar that you could find in the bottle at home, right? It does the same thing to you when it goes into your body. It's fructose, it's glucose, it's sucrose, and that's what's going to that's what's going to raise your blood sugar, especially glucose. Now, mangoes especially are very, very sweet, especially when they're ripe. So we always advise persons to, if they're having that mango, then you have, if it's like a big mango, like those red mangoes, the Julie mango, you have one face of a mango at a point in time. If it's the small little the Dudus mango, you have one of those mangoes. Some people like to eat a bucket. But of course, that's going to send your sugar way, 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 way too high. That's very, very dangerous. So we always tend to see when mango season comes around, then you always see people at the emergency room with very, very high blood sugars. And sometimes they develop something called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is very, very dangerous as well.
Why I'm raising these questions, my wife is diabetic. She used to be on metformin, but she has decided to change her diet, change her lifestyle, and she's in a business where she's on her foot all day and a lot of exercise, and she's been able to come off the metformin, and she checks her sugar every morning. But I noticed that, if she had something sweet, she'd go and have some tamarind or something like that. And she's saying that that helps her to bring the sugar down. A lot of people seem to share the view things like Karaili and tamarind, sour things. Is that bringing the sugar down, or is it masking the values?
Yeah. So there's also something called a placebo effect, and it could also refer to it as a psychosomatic effect, where people think things have an effect on your body, and just because your mind has a tremendous influence over your body, just by thinking something does something to you, it does have that effect. And that effect is documented, meaning that that could actually be beneficial to persons. Well, that's one aspect of it. The other is there is some evidence to show that there are other supplements or other remedies or even foods that have some effect in managing, lowering blood sugars. Now, the thinking of counteracting sweet with sour, as in sour is the opposite to sweet, that there's no basis in science for that. That's something people used to think about a long time ago. Like, you want to reduce your amount of sweet, you take something sour or something bitter. No, it doesn't work like that. Doesn't counteract it. But as you mentioned, Karaili, many persons have been claiming that Karaili does something for them. Now, there isn't enough evidence to show empirical clinical evidence to show whether or not this is true or not, so we can't dismiss it. There has been evidence to show other things, like, for example, cinnamon has been shown to assist, but the caveat to that is that there are hundreds of species of cinnamon trees around the world, and the type of cinnamon that you might see this effect in might not be the type we have here. And of course, then it comes to the dosage. What dose do you actually need? Now, this is why medications that the doctor gives you is so important, because these are dosed, these are tested, these have been shown to work on millions and millions of people, and we know what it does. Now, we're not advising against people using these things, and we refer to these as complementary medicines or alternative medicines. We're not negatively adverse to people using these things, but once it is that they don't shift away from the medications that the doctor gives you, or don't consult with your doctor, and that's important to do. Always consult with your doctor when you want to try something, because there may be negative interactions. Like, for example, most people don't know, or they may know, some people don't know, that drinking grapefruit juice has a negative impact on some of the medication that you take, and will reduce the absorption of those medications. So there are lots of negative interactions people may be unsure about. And this is why it's important for you to to consult with your physician when you are doing when you are taking anything new.
You know, I smile when you spoke about sugars because, you know, we tend to see sugar. The brown sugar that is sugar. But what we get in the mango and in the banana and all of that, that's not sugar. That's not that kind of sugar, you know? And it reminded me of same thing with alcohol. A lot of people don't see alcohol as being present in beer. They see alcohol as only being in rum. So if you're
Yeah.
drinking scotch or brandy or wine, you're not drinking alcohol, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So it reminds me the same kind of parallels. But it
Exactly.
doesn't matter how much you dilute a teaspoon of sugar, it's still a teaspoon of sugar. If you drank
Mm-hmm.
it in a small cup or you drank it in a whole tumbler, your still body's still going to have to deal with the same amount of sugar.
Yeah.
Now, I want to come to the relationship between diabetes and alcohol and drug addiction, because in addition to the whole fact of the caloric value of sugar, when we take it as sugar, and the caloric value of alcohol, it is when you drink in alcohol, it's just like you taking in sugars as well, and
Mm-hmm.
your body still has to process it. And alcohol just, you know, and it was really instructive when you said that diabetes is not a disease, it's a group of diseases. So too, alcohol affect not only the stomach and the digestive system, but the brain and the everything it touches. So
Mm-hmm.
similar to diabetes, alcohol is doing similar kinds of things to different organs of the body.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your opinion on? And then to add to that, I sent you a little video. I don't know if you looked at it from TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
saw another doctor from somewhere in the world claiming that alcohol is good for you if you're diabetic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know
So,
what?
so I really wanted to deal with that, and I'm glad that you did mention that.
Yes,
Um, let me just say the first thing is that alcohol gives you the same amount of energy or calories than sugar.
yeah,
Actually, alcohol gives you more energy or more calories than sugar. So
right,
a gram of sugar gives you about 4.5 calories. A gram of alcohol gives you about 7 calories, so 7 kilocalories. So
right.
you get more. But let's talk about that video that you sent me. And I'm very glad that you did send the video. And I wish we could have played the video here for persons. But of course, I don't want persons to take it out of context. So there are a lot of things that come out from that video. And actually, this Sunday, I have a talk at a launch of an event, which is geared towards um, educating people about the misinformation out there about health misinformation. Let me tell you what the name of the talk is. But this Sunday I'm going to be speaking about that at the launch of this event, which is the Health Ed event. So the Health Ed event. Um, Now, a couple of things here. So you said a doctor on TikTok said these things. Okay. So the man has doctor in front of his name. When you sent it to me, and I mean my critical thinking mind, after listening to what he says and being able to pick apart a lot of what he says isn't true. And then he has doctor in front of his name. Now, I've been trying to look to see who this person is. He's definitely not a medical doctor. He's not a scientist at all. I believe he may have a doctorate in some sort of social sciences, maybe. I'm not sure. But there are many, many persons out here who are unqualified or inexperienced to give certain types of advice. And because they either put doctor in front of the name, which lots of people in Trinidad do, lots of people do that, or they have doctorates in things which are not affiliated at all to what they do. They appear that they come from a position of authority, which they do. So this person, I believe, was using a continuous glucose monitor, CGM. We have CGMs here um, and at the association, and we actually, I don't know if I have one here to show you, but a CGM looks like this little thing here, this little device, and you put it onto your arm, and it syncs up to your phone, and it gives you your blood sugars every 5 minutes. So this man would have been eating things and drinking things, and from his observation, he saw that alcohol causes your blood sugar to lower or drop. And he said, well, okay, you could use alcohol to lower your blood sugar, but that's not true. That's dangerous. So here's what happens. If it is you drink alcohol, so first of all, there are different types of alcohol, as you know. As you just mentioned, you have beer and you have wine and you have whiskey, and then you can mix it with different things. So generally, when you have the alcohol and you have a mixer, most of the time that mixer is sugary.
Right.
So your blood sugars would raise because of that sugary mixture. Sometimes the hardcore people, might drink the alcohol straight,
Right.
no mixers. They're drinking white rum, and the white rum has very low sugar content. The darker rums would have more tannins, they will have more caramels in it and more sugar content in it. The beers have more sugar content. But the white rum, people say drink white rum, your sugar will drop. That is true. Your sugar is going to drop. But here's the problem. So basically, your body treats sugar as a toxin. And sugar is not sugar, alcohol. Alcohol is a toxin in your body. When it goes into your body has to break it down. Particularly in the liver, there's an enzyme called alcohol
Just
dehydrogenase.
for our listeners listening, a toxin is a poison.
Yes, poison. Well, not really. A toxin is not technically a poison, but yes, you could say that. A toxin could cause negative effects on the body.
Right.
So, but generally, the negative effects are not all absolute, meaning that there's no toxin that's absolutely toxic. Toxicity has to do with dosage, meaning you could have a drop of alcohol that's not going to do you anything. Because as I said, alcohol is found in bread. When you bake the bread,
Right.
alcohol is in the bread as well because it's yeast to use.
Right.
So, but depending the level that you have, that's where the toxicity comes in. But anyway, your liver has to break down this alcohol. There's an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase in the liver, and it breaks it down. Now, your liver is also one of the main organs responsible for glucose homeostasis, which means controlling your blood sugar. And if it is that the body is in a situation where there's a toxin presented to it, or you have to create glucose from stored glycogen or stores that you have in your body, you're always going to prefer to deal with the toxin. So what tends to happen is that when you drink a lot of alcohol, especially white rums that doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, when your blood sugar starts to go low, when you use up your blood sugar, naturally your body is going to turn to your glycogen stores in the liver, which is sugar stores in the liver.
Right.
If there's a lot of sugar, if there's a lot of alcohol, the body's going to focus on breaking down the alcohol instead. So this is going to cause your blood sugar to drop. Now, this is dangerous because people on insulin, people on medications, your blood sugar could drop way too low. And this is a problem right after. And the thing is, what's even more dangerous is feeling drunk or feeling tipsy is similar to having low blood sugar. You feel the same way,
Correct.
dizzy, and
Correct.
so you're not sure if you're getting high or your blood sugar going low. So it's even more dangerous. Now, what tends to happen after this low blood sugar is and the body has dealt with all of the alcohol. Your body now needs to recuperate, and there's something called a rebound effect, which means that all of that sugar that the body didn't release from the liver is now going to be broken down very, very quickly. So your blood sugars are going to shoot up. And so right after this period of time, you tend to have very high blood sugars for a period of time. So that's why alcohol and diabetes doesn't mix. Long ago, there used to be, well, not even long ago, just quite recently, it only changed recently. We used to say that, 1 to 2 drinks, standard drinks, were at a time were okay for people living with diabetes. But now, new evidence from the American Diabetes Association, Canadian Diabetes Association, shows that no alcohol at all is better. No alcohol at all is good for people living with diabetes. So that's also our advice, especially if you're on insulin. And some people with diabetes sacrifice the medication for the alcohol. So they say they can't mix the medication and alcohol. Well, I want to have a good time. I'm going to not take my medication and drink the alcohol and then get sick.
I'm glad that you're saying that because for the longest while it was mentioned in different circles that I have had the experience to be in where, it was felt that if you took one drink, it was good for your heart health,
Mm-hmm.
one drink of
Mm-hmm.
wine.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, I would say that, you know, and I've said it several times on this program, Dr. Dhanoo, that not everybody who drink will become alcoholic. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody who drink will become alcoholic. But everybody who became alcoholic started with that first drink.
Mm-hmm.
And we know now from the research there's a genetic predisposition to alcoholism. So
Yeah.
that especially if you have ancestors, your father, grandfather, great grandfather were alcoholics, then you especially have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at it empirically, I have done research at what used to be the ATC at St. Anne's Hospital. And I mean, you don't really have to be a researcher to just look around if you live in County Victoria and County Carney to see the prevalence of alcoholism among East Indians. We did the research at ATC, 82% of the readmissions there were East Indians from County Carney, County Victoria. And
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
what piqued my curiosity. Why is it Indians drinking so much? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why I'm happy that you are with us on this program, because I'm sure in your practice you would be seeing a lot of this. But coming back to the alcoholism, I also see, well, of course, by extension, people who drink and use drugs, they are not likely, I see this in my practice, they're not likely to be paying much attention to their health. They are mostly overweight. They don't attend to their diet properly. They don't eat in time. They don't sleep sufficiently. They expose themselves to all kinds of health risks and so on. And that would further complicate the fact that if they were diagnosed as being diabetic, these other behavioral patterns that they have because of drug use will further exacerbate the problem in their ability to manage. And like you said it, when they want to go out and have a good time, they they just not decide to take their medicine. And not only diabetics, I have said it on this program before. I'm also a person in recovery. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember being put on some medication by my medical doctor many years ago, and I called him, I borrowed a phone to call him to ask him if I could have a beer, the medication that he had prescribed. And he said, well, yeah, you could take one or two. You think I stopped at one or two?
Mm-hmm.
That was licensed for, and that's the alcoholic mentality. But I want to come back to a topic that is kind of peculiar that has been making the rounds, that East Indians, because of the famine we went through, our ancestors went through in India and so on, and because of the deprivation, some of it caused because of colonialism and Winston Churchill and all of them depriving all of these people, that somewhere along the we developed a particular gene that sort of causes us to conserve and put on weight and all of that, as though it's a response to a famine that might happen again. I don't know if you're familiar with that thinking, because why I'm saying that is there
Mm-hmm.
seems to be a correlation between obesity and diabetes. Because already,
Mm-hmm.
if you are diabetic and you are overweight, now you have an additional challenge because with overweight, I am seeing a lot of people in my practice with knee problems and hip problems and once your hip and your knees and so on start going, then by extension you are not going to be able to do much exercise to be able to keep yourself in shape. And of course, if you're not walking or moving around, you are also compromising your whole respiratory system because your blood can't come back to your heart and you don't get a full supply as a result. Your carbs not working. And a lot of people are not paying attention because they all go together. Being in complementary medicine, I see this as well. What are your thoughts on that?
All right. So there's a lots of things that you mentioned there.
Yes,
But let's start with the genetic part of it. And
yes,
in terms of the genetic changes, and quite technically is not really a gene that changes. It's something we refer to as epigenetics, which is how how the genes are influenced really. But we could, for simplicity, we could say genes. And over generations, you adapt. You adapt to survive. And it holds true for every characteristic we have today. Even diseases pop up because of adaptations to other changes that may have happened decades ago. So I'll say this: so diabetes and cardiovascular disease and cancers and these types of diseases we see more and more now is actually as of an effect of adaptations that we've developed long time ago to allow us to survive. But I always like to say our environment has adapted or changed faster than our bodies can keep up. And this is why we have this problem. Um, in terms of talking about our ancestors going through periods of famine and starvation, this is actually what I would have presented the first time I met you. And when we spoke about this starvation adaptation that happens when persons when you go through a famine, um, there is actually a twice as much chance of your offspring having diabetes and your grandchildren having high blood sugars. There's a twice as much chance as your
Wow.
grandchildren having. And that's just one famine. Our ancestors um, in India would have had to go through almost 20 famines over the period of about 100 years during British colonialism. That has caused what we refer to as starvation adaptation, which simply means that since the body has become so accustomed to working on a little bit of food, then your body wants to be more efficient. So you've developed the ability to be more efficient, which means not burn as much energy and hold on to fat because you don't know when the next famine is going to come. And that has been passed down through our ancestors. And of course, that's one of the reasons why we believe that persons of Indian descent are so much more at risk for being overweight, having diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and so on. Now, this also translates to alcohol, because as I mentioned earlier, alcohol, there's an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase,
Yeah.
which breaks down the alcohol in your liver. Now, there are some ethnicities because, again, there may be cultural associations. There may be economic associations with alcohol. So, for example, back in the dark ages when water was hard to come by, or clean water was hard to come by. I'm not sure if you know about what short beer was. And short beer is a type of alcohol with very low alcohol content that's made as a means of having a clean drink to have. So in European societies, they had this short beer which had alcohol in it. And the reason why is because this purified, in a sense, sterilized the liquid for them to drink it. So that's one instance. In societies which typically don't rely on alcohol, they have developed low synthesis or low production of alcohol dehydrogenase. And if they drink too much alcohol, they actually get sick. So Chinese people, for
Yes.
example, if some Chinese people have this gene, if it is that they drink alcohol, they turn red. And
Yeah.
you can't drink. Indian descent people on the other hand, have developed, just like the European people, have developed a high tolerance for alcohol. And I think this is one of the reasons why um, alcoholism has grown to the extent, but also there's a huge cultural significance because in Trinidad and Tobago, the alcohol industry, the rum industry, has been always closely linked to the sugarcane industry. So because many of our ancestors, Indian ancestors, worked in the sugarcane plantation and they had close associations with Brechin Castle and Carney and whatever came before, which produced the sugar, where they worked, alcohol was always closely produced right behind. So they always had that close relationship with that, and that built through the generations. That alcohol was also used as a means to get away from the problems that they had because they're very, very poor. And the alcohol was a means of getting away from it and again passing down from generation to the next. I know of course, families that encourage their young children to, take a drink and they start, the 10-year-old, take a little sip now, and you're
Right.
enjoying yourself. And then those same 10-year-olds go into secondary school and they hide and they drink and they get drunk in school and then they start to make trouble. And so it really starts very, very young.
Correct.
very, very young. Alcohol, smoking. Now we have vaping, all of these things. And parents are encouraging these things. And they don't know the effect that they have. And we talk about generational curses. This is a generational curse. It's something that happens in families and it's passed down through families and the issues that it causes, besides the health issue we're talking about today, the emotional issues, the social issues that alcohol causes is huge. And I think it affects our society so much.
You're right on point, because as you spoke about that, I grew up in a predominantly East Indian community and they work in the estate. And Dr. Dhanoo, at Christmas time, the estate will actually give them a bonus, but the bonus would be either one case of rum or two case of rum. They were
Mm,
paying them with giving
mhm,
them this bonus with alcohol. So that, and where I live now, I don't know if my good fortune or bad fortune, where I live in Felicity had a name, a rum name given to it, Felicity Gold. I
mhm,
don't mean to advertise it, but
mhm,
you found, and you couldn't help noticing in these communities with very little recreational facilities, the men would get up, they'd go and work in the estate, and they'd be coming back with all the black clothes from the burnt cane, and they would be in the rum shop until late in the night. They didn't
mhm,
go back, they
mhm,
just go home to sleep, get up in the
mhm,
morning, go back to work. There's
mhm,
very little else to do, and even the young people in my community, myself and a few others were the first to ever go to secondary school.
mhm,
All the rest of children, they would graduate from primary school, and when they reach in standard 5 or standard 6, well, the Mahasabha school that I went to only had standard 5. So by the
mhm,
time you were repeating standard 5, the next move was go and get a number. You go to the pay yard, the estate pay yard, which was in Hermitage, and you got a number. The number actually was an opportunity to get employment in the estate. The number is what would be written on your pay package. So you
mhm,
were not known by your name, but your number was more valuable than your name. It's a whole
mhm,
cultural thing. And
mhm, mhm,
yes, you are quite right in that pathology breeds pathology. What does
mhm,
children learn? You know, what I learned is, look, when family come, they would send me to the shop with a little bag to buy the drink and see if you get a tray of ice too. You know,
mhm,
the shop had this little fridge. So what am I learning? The way to entertain is with alcohol.
mhm,
If they
mhm,
had a wake and you didn't have alcohol, you couldn't have a wake. You understand? If a fella came to your house and you gave him everything else to drink, but you didn't give him alcohol, he'd go and complain. Your man didn't even offer me a drink.
mhm, mhm,
Because Mobi is not considered a drink. That's the culture that we live in, And
mhm,
I also did a research that showed the East Indian in Trinidad had a high incidence of alcoholism among them. But the North American Indians as well, they had a high incidence of alcoholism.
mhm, mhm,
The Irish as well. And what were common to these three groups is that they were what we call peripheral when it comes to the social mobility in the society. They were the fringe groups, they were not the dominant group. And we need to do more research to look at some of
mhm,
these things, how socioeconomic factors really
mhm,
influence the use of alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism, as a coping device, And it is interesting where we have had successive change
yeah,
and interchanges of government here, where it has really made any difference in this culture. I think this is ripe for researchers to look at to see if it has in fact made a
mhm,
difference. Because on the one hand, um, disposable income has shown to give rise to increased use of alcohol so that people working and making more money, even though it may look like their living conditions have improved, that in itself lends itself. And now we are seeing more and more women, they're sitting outside in the verandas as if it's nobody's
mhm,
business and having a
mhm,
drink. They're having the girls' lime on a Friday. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you are going to be seeing more and more of this. And of course, you know, when we're having a conversation like this, time is always running out. We just have a
Mm-hmm.
few more minutes again. So I want to ask you to round off by anything you would like to say coming out of our conversation. I know you
Yeah,
have identified a few activities that your association is doing, some presentations you are going to be making. If you could go back and remind us of those things, and
sure.
give us a contact for the Diabetes Association as well while you're at it.
Sure. Thanks. So again, thanks for inviting me and including me in this conversation. It's always important to understand, especially the role of diabetes and alcoholism. We didn't get a chance to talk about the effects of alcohol on causing diabetes because it does lead to fatty liver disease. It does lead to uncontrolled diabetes. This is a conversation for another day. Um, so we at the Diabetes Association have lots of activities. We're not focusing specifically on alcoholism and addiction, but that's where yourself and of course other organizations come in. But we're always willing to partner, willing to assist, willing to work with persons. Um, just a reminder, we have a lot of activities coming up. People can look at our social media pages or Facebook or Instagram. If you need assistance, if you need testing, screening, counseling, you want to join the association, you could give us a call. Our phone number is 607-3288. That's 607-3288, 607 that. You can message us on Facebook, message us on Instagram, TikTok. We'll be able to be reached like that as well. We are going to be having a National Diabetes Primary School quiz tomorrow at UV. 15 of our top standard three children are going to be there. It's going to be a really entertaining and educational program. It's going to be live on TV. It's going to be live on radio, but you could also tune in to our Diabetes Association Facebook page and YouTube page to view it live. It starts at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then, of course, as I said, we have lots of other things coming up. We have a camp for children with diabetes, a camp for overweight children. We're going to be doing our diabetic foot screening program soon. We're going to start our sixth form internship program soon. So we have, again, activities for all ages, people living with diabetes, people affected by diabetes, people at risk for diabetes. So with that, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity. I look forward to more conversations with you. And thank you to the listeners and viewers who would have tuned in today.
I want to thank you very much, Dr. Dhanoo. I know there's a lot of things competing for your attention even as we speak, and you were able to prioritize this program this morning and be with us and share some valuable information. There are a few things that I learned myself talking to you. You know, clearly, up to this point, I thought diabetes was one, but now I could see how it impacts all the other organs, the kidneys, the
Mhm.
liver, and all of that. So it's a combination of diseases, really. And I'm going to surely take you up on that offer to come back on the program because, as you identified, there are other things that we could speak specifically to the effect of alcohol on diabetes in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'll hold you to that promise. And I want to thank you again for being with us and thank the association for making all the other activities available. And please, our listeners, if you need have any questions, I could be reached at 671-3040. That is 671-3040. So I want to thank you again and thank all our listeners, both in Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide. And to remind you that this program will be repeated again at 10 p.m. tonight on radio and TV Jagriti, and it will be posted on YouTube and Facebook. I also want to thank the Mahasabha board for allowing us the free airtime as a public service to do this program every week from Thursday at 9 to 10. So thank you again, and thank all of you for listening, and see you all next week, Thursday. Bye now.